The night was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional honk of a car in frustration. The streetlights flickered, their dull yellow glow casting long shadows along the cracked pavement. Alicia Carter glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror as she waited at the red light, adjusting the tight bun that had loosened after a long, grueling day in court. It had been another exhausting battle, a case involving a corrupt senator who had laundered millions through shell companies. Alicia had stood her ground, presenting evidence with the razor-sharp precision that had earned her both respect and fear in the federal courtroom. Now, all she wanted was to get home, take off her heels, and collapse into bed. She barely noticed the black and white police cruiser idling at the corner until the flashing red and blue lights illuminated her rear window. A sigh escaped her lips. She wasn't speeding, she hadn't run the light. There was no reason she should be getting pulled over. Still, she signaled, slowly pulling her black Mercedes to the side of the road. In the rearview mirror, she watched as a tall officer stepped out, adjusting the belt on his uniform. He moved with an air of authority, no arrogance. Another officer remained in the vehicle, barely visible. The tap of knuckles against her window startled her. Alicia rolled it down, keeping her expression composed. "License and registration," the officer demanded. His voice was sharp, clipped, void of the standard, "Good evening, ma'am," that she usually expected. She arched a brow, slipping her fingers into the compartment. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over?" "Officer Ryan Calloway," he answered. "And no, you may not. Hand over your license and registration." Alicia's fingers tightened around the documents, but she remained calm. "I have every right to ask. Officer Calloway, unless I've violated a traffic law. You need probable cause." His eyes darkened, a muscle in his jaw ticked. "Step out of the car," he said. She blinked. "Excuse me? You heard me. Step out, now." Alicia stayed still, her pulse quickening. "If you can tell me what." His hand moved fast, yanking the door open before she could react. "Step out of the fucking car. Now." Shock shot through her like ice. The other officer, his partner, was out of the vehicle now, watching, but making no effort to intervene. A civilian had paused on the sidewalk, phone in hand, recording. "Okay," Alicia said carefully. "I'm getting out." She moved with calculated slowness, setting her high heels on the pavement. The air was colder than she expected. Or maybe it was the chill of knowing exactly what this was. She had seen it happen too many times, on the news, in case files, in testimony from families left grieving. And now, it was happening to her. Before she could say another word, Calloway grabbed her wrist and shoved her against the hood of her car. The breath rushed out of her lungs as she felt his weight pressing against her. "Hands where I can see them." Her cheek scraped against the metal. She clenched her fists. "I am a federal prosecutor," she said slowly, enunciating each word. Calloway let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "And I'm the fucking Pope." "Shut up." She closed her eyes, the rage burning deep, but she forced herself to remain still. If she fought back, he'd escalate. He wanted her to react. The phone recorded everything. He didn't know who he had just put his hands on, but he would soon. Alicia sat in the dimly lit hospital room, the dull throb of pain radiating from her bruised ribs. The attending doctor had pressed gently along her side, confirming that there were no fractures. But the bruising was severe. Severe. That word clung to her like smoke. Severe force. Severe misconduct. Severe consequences. Alicia Carter had spent her entire career prosecuting criminals, holding corrupt men accountable, ensuring justice was not just a word but a reality. Now, for the first time, she was the victim. Her phone buzzed beside her. It was her assistant, Maya. "Alicia, the video is everywhere." Maya's voice came through in a sharp whisper. "Social media. The news. It's viral." Alicia exhaled. She had expected that. The moment she saw that civilian filming, she had known, but she wasn't ready for the rage she heard in Maya's voice. "He doesn't even know who you are yet. Does he?" "Not yet," Alicia said quietly. "But he will." She didn't believe in vengeance. She believed in justice. And now, she was going to ensure that Ryan Calloway understood the full weight of the law. Alicia straightened, wincing slightly. "Prepare a statement. Contact the Attorney General. We are going to war." Ryan Calloway sat in the locker room of the precinct, gripping his beer like it was the last thing tethering him to reality. The video had exploded overnight. His name was everywhere. Mike Dawson, his partner, paced the room. "This is bad. Man, real bad." Ryan scoffed. "It's a media circus. Give it a week, and they'll move on to the next outrage." Mike wasn't convinced. "She's a fucking federal prosecutor." "Ryan." Silence. Ryan's knuckles turned white against the beer can. "You're lying," he said. Mike shook his head. "She's Alicia Carter. Do you know who she is? She's put senators behind bars. She's had Supreme Court cases. And you tackled her to the fucking hood of her car." A slow, creeping dread slithered up Ryan's spine. He had fucked up. Alicia met with Ethan Wallace at a secluded cafe downtown. The journalist had been waiting for this kind of case, something big. Something that could expose the rot inside law enforcement. "You have more than enough evidence to bury him," Ethan said, his fingers tapping against the table. "But this goes deeper. His records are clean, but I guarantee they were scrubbed." Alicia nodded. "I need every piece of dirt on him and his department." Ethan leaned forward. "Are you ready for the war this will bring?" Alicia's eyes burned with determination. "It's already started." The storm had only just begun. By the time Alicia arrived at her office the next morning, the case had already exploded across every major news network. CNN, MSNBC. Even conservative outlets were covering the video, each with their own spin. The footage had been replayed so many times that she could practically hear the officer's voice in her head on repeat, his sneer, his arrogance. Outside the glass walls of her firm's offices, reporters were swarming, cameras flashing as they jostled for space. Protesters had begun gathering, some holding signs demanding justice, others spewing thinly veiled threats. Maya met her at the door, her face tight with concern. "You should see this," she said, shoving a tablet into Alicia's hands. The screen displayed a press conference held by Police Commissioner Robert Hayes. His stiff posture and clipped tone betrayed his attempt to control the narrative. "Officer Ryan Calloway has been placed on administrative leave, pending further investigation," Hayes said. A reporter off-screen interrupted. "Does that mean he'll still be getting paid?" Hayes hesitated. "For now, yes. But I assure you, we take allegations of misconduct very seriously." The video cut off as Alicia handed the tablet back. "He's buying time," she muttered. Maya nodded. "They're hoping the public outrage dies down." "It won't," Alicia said firmly. "Not this time." She turned to her office, already formulating a strategy. The legal battle would be fierce, but she knew she had the upper hand. Calloway had made a fatal mistake. He had assumed she was powerless. Now, she would prove just how wrong he was. Ethan Wallace sat hunched over his laptop, scrolling through years of police reports, complaints, and buried cases. He had spent years investigating law enforcement corruption, but what he was uncovering about Ryan Calloway sent chills down his spine. The officer's record was spotless on paper, too spotless. No complaints, no disciplinary actions, but Ethan knew how the system worked. Records could be altered, complaints erased. He just had to dig deeper. His fingers danced over the keyboard as he hacked into an old police database, one that had been left unsecured for years. The moment the files loaded, he saw it: sealed complaints. More than a dozen, each one a case of excessive force, racial profiling, and abuse of power. Some had been filed by civilians, others by fellow officers, and every single one had been dismissed or resolved internally. Ethan's pulse quickened. This wasn't just about Ryan Calloway anymore. This was about a system designed to protect men like him. He grabbed his phone and dialed Alicia. "You were right," he said the moment she answered. "Calloway's dirty, but it's bigger than him." Alicia's voice was steady. "How big?" Ethan exhaled. "We're talking entire precincts covering for each other. Complaints disappearing. Victims silenced. This is a machine, and Calloway is just one of its soldiers." Silence. Then Alicia said, "Then we take down the machine." Ryan Calloway had underestimated her. He saw that now. He sat in his dimly lit apartment, gripping a half-empty bottle of whiskey, the glow of his television illuminating his tense face. The news anchors were still talking about it, still replaying that damn video. His phone buzzed. He hesitated before answering. "You should have handled it better." The voice on the other end was cold, authoritative. Ryan tensed. "I didn't know who she was." "It's not about who she is. It's about what happens next." Ryan clenched his jaw. They're making me the villain. A pause. Because you are. Ryan's grip on the bottle tightened. What do you want? You need to clean this up. Or someone else will. The line went dead. Ryan stared at the phone. He knew exactly what that meant. If he didn't take care of Alicia Carter, someone else would, and they wouldn't be nearly as gentle. The black SUV had been following Alicia for 3 blocks now. She noticed it in her rearview mirror. Its tinted windows preventing her from seeing the driver. She changed lanes, so did the SUV. She turned onto a side street, so did the SUV. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. She wasn't naive. She knew the risks of taking on a corrupt system. But this was fast. Too fast. Her phone rang. Ethan. Alicia. You need to be careful. He said the moment she answered. I just got tipped off. Someone's looking into your private records. Who? She asked. Her voice steady. Someone with power. I don't know who yet. But I don't like this. Neither did she. She glanced back at the SUV. It was still there. Her mind raced. If she went home, she'd be giving them exactly what they wanted, her location. If she called the police, they might be the ones watching her. She needed to shake them. Taking a sharp right turn, she pressed her foot against the gas pedal. Weaving through traffic, the SUV followed. Adrenaline surged through her veins. She turned again, this time pulling into a crowded parking garage. Winding up 2 levels before abruptly shutting off her engine. She watched from the shadows. The SUV slowed at the entrance. For a moment, it hovered there. Then, it drove off. Alicia exhaled. This was a warning. A reminder. They were watching her. And they wanted her to know. She grabbed her phone again. Ethan, find out everything you can. I need to know who's pulling the strings. On it, he said. Alicia closed her eyes for a moment. Steadying herself. If they thought intimidation would scare her off, they had no idea who they were dealing with. She wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Alicia didn't go home that night. She knew better. Instead, she drove straight to a secure hotel under a different name, using an alias that only her closest colleagues knew. She wasn't being paranoid, she was being careful. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ethan, you're not going to like this, he said, his voice tight. Alicia took a breath. Tell me. They're digging into your past. Alicia, someone is trying to paint you as a problem. I found a request for sealed juvenile records, employment history, even a goddamn credit report. She exhaled slowly. They want dirt on me. Yeah, and if they can't find any, they'll make some up. Alicia leaned against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. She had been prepared for legal battles, for media smears, even for subtle threats, but this? This was an attempt to dismantle her. Not just professionally, but personally. She tapped her fingers against her thigh. Have you found anything else on Calloway? More than I expected, Ethan said. You were right, his record was scrubbed clean. But I dug into his old precinct before he transferred here. There were 2 fatal shootings under his name. Both were dismissed as justified force. But guess what? Let me guess, Alicia said. No body cam footage? Bingo. And one of the families was paid off. I'm trying to track them down. Alicia's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about her anymore. Calloway had been protected for years, leaving a trail of victims behind him. Find them, she said. We're going to bring every last piece of this into the light. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did the people hunting her. By morning, the attack on her had begun. The first news outlet ran an anonymous report, questioning her prosecutorial record. The second questioned whether she had fabricated her claims for political gain. By noon, a conservative media host was ranting about her, claiming she was anti-police and had a history of radical legal activism. Alicia watched from her office, sipping coffee as Maya paced the room. This is ridiculous. Maya snapped. They're twisting everything. The case has barely started. And they're already playing dirty. Alicia set the cup down. They're scared. Maya turned. Of what? Of what happens when a black federal prosecutor doesn't back down? She leaned forward, clicking the remote to change the channel. The next station had a legal analyst discussing her case. The problem here, the analyst said, is that Alicia Carter has been aggressive in her legal career. She's put powerful people in jail. And that makes enemies. It's possible she's overreacting, turning this into a spectacle. Maya scoffed. A spectacle? He slammed you into your own car. Alicia smirked, which is why they're working overtime to change the narrative. The public opinion battle was raging. But she had a weapon Calloway didn't. Proof. And she was about to use it. She grabbed her phone and dialed Ethan. "Drop the footage," she said. Etan hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Do it." 2 hours later, a longer version of the body cam footage was leaked to the press. The audio was clear. Calloway laughing as he shoved her against the car. The racial slurs under his breath. The smugness in his voice as he dismissed her title. The internet erupted. Alicia sat back in her chair, watching the world react. The battle had just begun. Ryan Calloway punched a hole in his wall. The footage was everywhere. He could hear it playing from the TV in his living room. See his own face plastered across every website. His boss hadn't even bothered to call him. Just sent a curt message. "We need to talk." Mike Dawson, his partner, stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're fucked, man," Mike muttered. Ryan turned, rage burning in his eyes. "I can fix this." Mike scoffed. "How?" "She's a federal prosecutor. She's got every reporter in the country looking at you." Ryan paced, breathing heavily. "I still have friends. People who can make this go away." Mike shook his head. "This isn't just a PR problem. Ryan, they're digging. They know about the other cases." Ryan stopped. "Which ones?" "All of them." For the first time, fear flickered in Ryan's eyes. His entire career, he had gotten away with everything. Because the system let him. Because he was protected. Now, that protection was crumbling. He clenched his fists. "If she wants war," he muttered, "she'll get one." Alicia's security detail doubled overnight. The threats had started pouring in. Calls to her office, emails, even letters sent directly to her home. Some were racist rants. Others were detailed death threats. She expected all of it. What she didn't expect was what happened next. Maya burst into her office. Her face pale. "You need to see this." She turned her laptop around. A new headline blared across the screen. "Breaking. Federal prosecutor Alicia Carter under investigation for misconduct." Alicia froze. "What the hell is this?" Maya clicked the article. "Some anonymous sources are claiming you fabricated evidence in previous cases. That you used coercion to get witnesses to testify." Alicia's stomach twisted. This was the play. They couldn't beat her in the courtroom. So they were trying to discredit her entirely. Maya looked up. "This is Calloway. Or someone above him. They're trying to take you out before you take them down." Alicia's phone rang. "Ethan, I don't know how," he said, "but they've gotten to the DOJ. There's a formal review of your past cases now." Alicia took a slow, steady breath. If they wanted a war, they had just made a mistake. She wasn't just going to survive this. She was going to burn them to the ground. Alicia Carter sat at the long, polished conference table in her office. Her fingers steepled beneath her chin. The room was filled with a heavy, electric tension, as if everyone inside was bracing for an incoming storm. Across from her, Maya stood with her arms crossed, her expression tight with barely restrained fury. "They're coming at you from every angle," Maya said. "The DOJ review. The media smears. The threats. It's not just about Calloway anymore. This is bigger." Alicia had already known that. She had felt the shift the moment her name had become the target. This wasn't just about silencing her case. They wanted to destroy her entirely. Ethan's voice came through the speakerphone. Sharp and urgent. "I found something. A pattern." Alicia straightened. "Go on." "They've done this before," Ethan said. "To other prosecutors, judges, hell, even cops who don't fall in line. The same strategy. Discredit. Threaten. And if none of that works, make them disappear." Maya exhaled. "So, what's our move?" Alicia's mind was already spinning through possibilities. She had spent her career going after criminals. But this was something different. This wasn't just corruption, it was a machine. A machine designed to protect itself at all costs. "We fight back," Alicia said. "We dig into everything. I want names. I want connections. I want to know who's pulling the strings." Maya hesitated. "Alicia, this could get dangerous." Alicia met her gaze. "Unwavering. It already is." The city skyline was bathed in the eerie glow of streetlights and neon signs when Ryan Calloway entered the underground parking garage. His hands were slick with sweat, but he wiped them against his jeans as he walked toward the black sedan waiting in the shadows. The driver's side window rolled down just enough to reveal the silhouette of a man inside. A faint glow from a cigarette illuminated cold, calculating eyes. You've made quite the mess, the man said. Ryan swallowed hard. I didn't know who she was. The man cut him off with a slight tilt of his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is cleaning it up. Ryan hesitated. The leaks. The media. I can't stop it. She's not backing down. A long silence. Then, the man exhaled a slow stream of smoke. Then it's time to take more decisive measures. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? The man reached into his coat, pulled out a small slip of paper, and handed it through the window. Ryan took it with unsteady fingers. This is your last chance to fix this, the man said. If you can't, we will. The car pulled away, tires whispering against the concrete. Ryan looked down at the paper. A single name and address were scrawled across it. Alicia Carter. He clenched his jaw. One way or another, this had to end. Alicia knew something was wrong the moment she stepped outside. The night air was thick with humidity. But it wasn't the heat that made her skin prickle, it was instinct. The street was too quiet. The usual sounds of the city, distant sirens, honking cars, muffled conversations, were absent. She scanned the area. A black sedan sat parked across the street, its engine running. Alicia's grip tightened on her purse. She wasn't afraid, but she was prepared. She turned on her heel, heading back toward her building. Then, footsteps. Fast, purposeful. A shadow moved in the periphery of her vision. She spun around just as a figure lunged toward her. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she twisted, slamming her elbow into the attacker's ribs. He grunted, stumbling back, but he was faster than she expected. Alicia reached into her purse, fingers closing around the cool steel of the small handgun she carried. The attacker froze as she leveled it at him. Ryan Calloway, breathing hard, his eyes wild, his hand hovering over his own concealed weapon. Alicia's heart pounded. This is what it's come to, she said, voice steady despite the fury burning inside her. You assault me, you try to ruin my life. And now you want to kill me? Ryan's fingers twitched. His expression was unreadable, desperation, anger, something darker. You don't get it, he muttered. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. Alicia held her ground. Then tell me who's pulling the strings. Ryan's jaw clenched. It won't matter. Alicia's finger hovered near the trigger. Try me. For a moment, she thought he might actually talk. But then, headlights flooded the street, and a second figure emerged from the shadows. A shot rang out. Ryan staggered, clutching his side, eyes wide in shock. Blood seeped through his shirt. The second man, still hidden by the glare of the headlights, stepped closer. Alicia's stomach dropped. This wasn't an ambush. It was a hit. Ryan wasn't here to kill her. He was here to die. Alicia drove through the city, hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The adrenaline hadn't faded yet. Ryan Calloway was dead. A man who had been her enemy, who had attacked her, was now lying in a pool of his own blood. And she had nothing, no proof, no evidence, just the knowledge that this wasn't random. This was orchestrated. Her phone rang. Ethan's voice was urgent. I heard what happened. Jesus. Alicia. I didn't kill him, she said immediately. I know, Ethan said, but whoever did, they made sure there are no loose ends. Alicia exhaled sharply. They're covering their tracks. They're sending a message, Ethan corrected, and the message is that they're willing to kill to keep this buried. Alicia pulled into an empty parking lot, shutting off the engine. The night was thick with silence. She closed her eyes, taking a steadying breath. Ryan Calloway had been a foot soldier, a cog in the machine. And now, the machine had discarded him. Which meant one thing, she was getting too close. But if they thought she was going to back down, they had underestimated her. Because now, this wasn't just about justice. This was about survival. And she wasn't going to let them win. The city felt different now. Everything was quieter, like a deep breath before the plunge. Ryan Calloway's death had sent shockwaves through the media. But the police had labeled it a gang-related incident, closing the case almost as fast as it had opened. No mention of Alicia, no mention of the hit, no questions about why a disgraced cop had been gunned down just days after his suspension. Alicia knew better. She sat in her office, staring at the crime scene photos spread across her desk, blood pooling on the pavement, the tight grip Ryan had on his stomach as he bled out. The absence of any real investigation. Ethan paced behind her, restless. They cleaned this up fast. Too fast. They needed him gone, Alicia said, flipping through the reports. He was a liability. Maya walked in, a file tucked under her arm. Then they made a mistake. Alicia turned to her, frowning. What do you mean? Maya placed the file down. Calloway had a storage unit. He paid for it in cash every month. No paper trail, until now. Alicia's pulse quickened. What's in it? Maya hesitated. We don't know. But whatever it is, it might be the only piece of him they didn't erase. They didn't need to say it out loud. If Ryan Calloway had been keeping secrets, someone else would want them gone too. And that meant Alicia had to get there first. The facility was nearly empty when they arrived, the cold night air biting at their skin. Alicia, Ethan, and Maya walked past rows of metal doors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Unit 142. Alicia hesitated before unlocking it, heart pounding in her chest. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space filled with boxes, an old filing cabinet, and a battered laptop resting on top of a stack of folders. Maya exhaled. Looks like he was collecting his own insurance policy. Alicia moved forward, flipping open one of the folders. Names, dates, cases, all tied to Calloway's precinct. She frowned, scanning the pages. Then she saw it. A name that didn't belong. Robert Hayes, the police commissioner. Alicia exchanged a glance with Ethan. He's in this. Ethan whistled. That's not just any cop. That's the guy running the whole damn department. Maya sifted through more files. There's more. Officers, judges, politicians. This isn't just about Calloway. This is an entire network. Alicia's hands tightened around the folder. They had just found proof of a conspiracy bigger than she had ever imagined. And now, they weren't just going after one cop. They were going after the most powerful man in the city. Alicia knew they had to act fast. The second they left that storage unit, they became targets. Maya wiped the laptop clean, copying all the files onto an encrypted drive. Ethan took photos of every document before repacking them. They moved quickly, but Alicia could feel the weight of what they had found pressing down on her. This wasn't just about Ryan Calloway. It was about decades of cover-ups. As they left the storage facility, a black SUV was idling down the street. Alicia's stomach dropped. We need to move, she murmured. They barely made it to their car before the SUV revved its engine and peeled after them. Ethan floored the gas. Shit, they're following us. Alicia grabbed her phone. Drive to the federal building. Maya twisted in her seat. You think they'll try something this close to the DOJ? Alicia's jaw clenched. I think they're desperate enough to do anything. The SUV accelerated, cutting through traffic, inching closer. Then, a gunshot rang out. The back windshield shattered. Maya ducked with a scream. They're shooting at us. Ethan swerved, barely missing a collision as the SUV tried to ram them off the road. Alicia's fingers flew over her phone, dialing the only person she knew could stop this. Agent Brooks. This is Alicia Carter, she said the second the line connected. I need immediate backup outside the federal building. I am being pursued by armed assailants. Who is it? The agent demanded. The people protecting Commissioner Robert Hayes, Alicia said through gritted teeth. Ethan whipped the car around a corner, heading straight for the DOJ headquarters. The SUV hesitated. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. They peeled away just as Alicia and her team skidded to a stop in front of the massive, floodlit building. They had survived the first attack, but the war had just escalated. The next morning, the city was on fire. The files Alicia had recovered were already in the hands of federal investigators. News stations were running headlines on police corruption, leaked documents, secret payments, and the deep ties between the commissioner and some of the city's most dangerous criminals. Alicia sat at her desk, exhaustion tugging at her, but she didn't let it show. Across from her, Agent Brooks was reviewing the evidence, his face unreadable. This is enough to take Hayes down, he admitted, but you know what happens next, right? Alicia nodded. They're going to try to bury it. Brooks leaned forward. Then we don't give them the chance. The FBI wasted no time. By noon, Commissioner Hayes was being dragged out of his office in handcuffs. The department was imploding. Officers scrambling to cut deals. Whistleblowers coming forward. Alicia watched the footage on TV. A quiet satisfaction settling in her chest. Justice had been served. But she knew this wasn't the end. Maya stepped into the room. a hesitant look on her face. "There's something you should see." She handed Alicia a file. "A different name. A different city." Alicia frowned. "What is this?" Maya exhaled. "It's happening in other places too. This was just one branch of a much bigger system." Alicia stared at the papers, then closed them with a soft click. She wasn't done. Not yet. She looked up at Maya and Ethan. "Then let's get to work." The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.